Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the podcast. This week, I wanted to invite Jules onto the podcast. Now, Jules is a NLP life coach and someone who I've been helping with getting some more clarity around what she does, how she does it, how she can come across on socials. And then we ended up deciding that she should launch a podcast and how that would be and what that would be and how I could help her actually achieve that. So I mainly wanted to bring her onto my podcast to talk about how she's found that experience and how she has, found it beneficial to her business, but also to her for us to kind of explore the mindsets and some of the things that business owners are going through at the moment, and how using empathy you can, empathize with that business owner and empathize with that, person you're working with or for, and allowing them to make sure that, they're happy and they're getting the best product and service that you can offer them as well. So I really, really hope you do enjoy this interview, and I'll be back next week to showcase and talk to another amazing business owner who's going to be talking about something very exciting on the podcast. So thank you so much for joining me once again. Enjoy this interview, and I'm now going to hand over to Jules, who is going to introduce a little bit more on what she does and how she does it and why she does it.
Hi, I'm Jules, Jules Whale, and I'm an NLP life coach, and I'm based in Salisbury, in not so sunny Wiltshire.
Definitely at the moment, not so sunny Wiltshire.
Definitely at the moment, not so sunny.
As at the time of filming, it's been raining all day, which is not ideal weather. But thank you for your time as always, Jules. And for those who don't know, because I've been very on my socials, very up in the air regarding some of the podcast work we've been doing and etc. And I've been saying, oh, I'm doing this podcast work for this unknown client. I will be happy to reveal that Jules was this unknown client, for those who would be interested. But for those who don't know what our relationship has been and what I've been doing with you and helping you do, could you shed some light on that and how you've kind of, I guess, found it, and then what was the initial, the starting want for you to initially start on this venture that became the podcast and became, this exciting exploration, but I've personally really, really enjoyed as well.
Yeah, me too, Carlton. I think, thank you for inviting me to talk today. It's actually quite strange because I didn't realise I'd been a secret other person in your world for a while, so it's probably quite a relief for all that I'm now outed. I came about you. I've been life coaching now for 4 years, and I do quite a lot on LinkedIn. I do a bit on, not so much on Facebook, but I dip in and out of socials, and I wanted to really get it out there more, I guess, to reach more people, to enlighten more people as to the powers of NLP life coaching. And most people say, NL what? And so I found that really chewing over the best way forward was to get some podcasting done. And I asked around, and your name came up, Carlton. So that's how I found you. And when I actually met you, the first time I met you, and I'm going to say this is social distancing because it's going to be current, this, and contextual, so it was socially distanced. I found that your way of working was to actually enable me to do what I want to do, with you guiding that. And it's really similar to what I do. So I found that rapport very easy to build with you. And what I liked about you was that sense of possibility and enablement you gave me. So we can do this. How we're doing it is irrelevant to me. You've taken that part away from me, which is absolutely super perfect. That really suits me. But what I can do is I can relax into getting the message that I want out there, to as many people as I can. And so for me, it's a really cruisy experience. There's no stress involved in it. I've been, I have been allowed and am allowed to really do free fall. So I like conversational podcasting. I prefer that. And at no stage did you suggest otherwise. You said, let's just go with it. And I really like that with the stuff that I've thrown at what I want to do, you've shaped it into something that when I listen back, it makes sense. When people listen back, it makes sense to them. And I really like what I'm hearing.
Did you think for initially when we started that you would, I guess, like to listen to yourself back? However, like that would be, because there's a lot of, I think, a misconception when people create content. They're going to be like, oh, you're going to hate what you sound like, or there's this misconception of when people like create video, for example, they hate the way they look, they hate the way they sound, etc. So, for me, it's interesting to hear that, number one, but also number two, it's really nice for me to hear that you did really like how you came across and really liked how you did, because it means to me that whatever I'm doing isn't very, we have to do it this way, right? Which is what I didn't want it to be, but also it allows you to showcase what you do the best. Because I think a misconception in marketing is that the marketer needs to help sell, I guess, or help showcase, or help articulate why whatever it is you're trying to help market is important to the consumer, or is important to the client, the customer, whoever it may be. That's not our job as marketers. Our job as marketers is to put it in such a way which allows it to be easier to consume, right? Or easier to be, consumed or watched or listened to, so that your messages, so that your values, so that your understanding of whatever the topic, in this case NLP, but in any general terminology, whatever that topic or that value would be that, you have to add. So, I mean, I have two questions there. Firstly, that's great to hear. But secondly, for those who don't know what role NLP has specifically, what does NLP do? What is it?
Okay, well, I'll just go back a little bit, because you did touch upon, did I think I was going to hate my voice, or did I worry about that? And I do understand that some people could fear their, hearing their voice. That isn't so much for me, because I have done quite a bit with my voice, and my voice really is one of my tools in my job, which then leads really into a very basic explanation of what NLP is. It actually stands for Neuro Linguistic Programming, and it's very, very simple. The middle word in that is linguistic, which is speech, which is power, the power of speech, and the power of receiving information verbally, orally. So what NLP is, it's the ability, it's a set of things that we do to enable the client to actually consider things more in bettering the communication with themselves. So, for example, if you are having a conversation with yourself that you're not good enough, and I think all of us do that from time to time, what NLP will do, it will actually answer that conversation. It will actually pull it apart and challenge it. So why are you feeling anxious? What is it about today that's causing you a problem? And it challenges it. And the beauty of it is that it doesn't ever deal with why it happens. Why did I get to this? It doesn't matter. Why is irrelevant. It's happened. But what NLP is really fantastic at doing is enabling us to actually make sense of what happened, not even agree with it, not even like it, but make sense of it, and then park it and move on and create a different way forward. So, and my voice for that with my clients becomes an anchor. They listen to the way that I describe things. So yes, I do use it a lot. Some people prefer to work visually, so then my voice wouldn't be that key, but then I would use it to build pictures, help them build pictures. So it's in its basic form, Carlton, it's about improving communication with yourself and other people, changing your message, changing your barcoding on certain thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's really interesting for me, and I think it's important to have that internal dialogue, right? For me specifically as a business owner, and I'm sure you've had stages in your career as well where your own internal dialogue is the thing that gets you up in the morning, is the thing that, you know, pushes you forward, and is the thing that specifically, you know, allows you to attach yourself to that goal, whatever it is you're striving for. You know, a lot of my and the next question kind of comes into this a little bit as well, is, you know, something that I've really taken away from the work we've been doing with the podcast, and something that really kind of hit home with me that I didn't have before the podcast, was what happens if you decide not to do anxiety. Now, that wording, and I'll get you to explain it a little bit more as well in a moment, but for me, that really kind of showcases the power of the internal dialogue if you can learn to utilize it correctly. You know, a lot of people, as we were discussing a little bit before the podcast as well, you know, a lot of people who do listen to this podcast are entrepreneurs. They are people who maybe have just left college, just left school, going to uni, in between uni and college, or etc., you know, or about to leave uni and are like, oh, I don't know what the outside world is like, really, because they've had the educational shelter, right? And or they've been possibly made redundant, especially nowadays, you know, and they're having that situation where they don't know what's best to do. They're concerned, they're worried, they're, you know, stressed. And, you know, just before I hand back to you, that's normal, right? Business owners, all, no matter how many years you've been in business, you always have hurdles. You always have fires to put out, depending on how you want to describe it, right? Like, this morning is a good example of this. I woke up to a new problem. I was like, oh, how exciting, a new problem that I need to fix today. So I spent half the day trying to fix that. But, you know, it's and I've talked about this on other pieces of content, and that's why I don't want to talk about it too much here, but the thing that I think sets some business owners apart from others, or more experienced business owners apart from others, is the ability for them to be able to tackle something that could be a disagreement, could be a misunderstanding, could be an argument, or could be a problem, and be able to fix that problem for that client, or fix that problem for that person, whoever it may be. You know, and how does this come back to the initial point of what happens if you don't do your anxiety? I think it comes in line with that internal dialogue of how do you react to that situation, right? So I guess the question there is, how did you come up with that approach? Is that something you're taught in your training with NLP, or is that a Jules way of you know, an approach to deal with it? Because for me, that's what really stood apart from everything that we've done with the podcast. And, you know, those who are interested, I will link Jules' channel in the description down below. Those who are interested in listening to the podcast episodes that we've done, you know, those are the specific, like, that as a specific thing to hold on to is the main thing I've taken from the mini series that we've done of the podcast.
That's good. That's really good, Carlton. And I think, you know, going back to that initial thought of how do you do your anxiety, just to give a brief outline into the way the subconscious works, because anxiety comes from subconscious throwing thoughts into the conscious. And what we do is, you know, the anxiety is slung out from the unconscious with this sort of overarching view to keep us safe. So you don't want to be doing that, because that's not going to feel good. Or, you know, if you go for that interview and don't get the job, that's going to be awful. So what the subconscious will do, because it doesn't filter right from wrong, it just is. So it will sling out this thought, you know, well, just don't go then, just don't go, and then that will all be fine. So then what we tend to do is we react to that and respond to that. So by saying, how do you do your anxiety? It's recognizing that you have it. It's recognizing that to have a degree of anxiety is entirely natural, and we wouldn't want to take that away, because if you find yourself heading over a cliff, it's probably quite a good idea that you listen to your subconscious at that point. Think, oh, I better move away because I'm going to plunge off the cliff. So, and I'm not making light of it, because anxiety is it's you know, it's such a common problem, and it's debilitating. So what I do, and yes, the techniques are learned, but the application is something that I think all NLP master practitioners take to make their own. And I've found that by actually talking with people and saying, how do you do your anxiety? It puts anxiety on a par with having to clean your teeth, or put new shoelaces in, or pump your bike tires up or put petrol in your car. It's something, it's a task. So then you change your relationship with it. You think, well, actually, it's getting in the way. It's not useful. It's not useful. How I'm responding is not useful. So what I do is I help you to take it from the response to the proaction. And so what am I going to do when I feel those key things starting? What will I do that will enable me to move past that and put something positive? Just very quickly, I was working with a young lady, and we talked about her anxiety. And I said, what I'd like you to do is do your anxiety at least once a day. And she said, that sounds insane. I said, yeah, but if you get to the end of the night and you haven't done it, you can't carry it across. It's spent then. But you think, well, I haven't done my anxiety yet. Now, what you're doing, and it's comical, but it works so much. You're fogging the brain with this. Well, I should be feeling anxious about getting ready to feel anxious, but now I'm thinking I've got to put it in my diary, and now I'm in control of it. I'm telling it when to do it. And it's just the weirdest experience, but it's so effective. And she actually messaged me and said, I didn't get to do it on Sunday at all. And I almost felt robbed. And now she said that has been so powerful. And this is a young lady that was very, very anxious, hyper anxious most of the time. So in a very, very short session, she had got on top of it, in control of it, recognized it, named it. Oh, it's my anxious job I've got to do today. Then suddenly you've completely reversed the concept. Now you're in charge. I don't want to do anxiety at the moment. I've got stuff to do. I've got content to write. I've got a job interview to write for, and you've mastered it. It's that quick and that simple.
And it reminds me of an audiobook I listened to a couple of years ago that's known as Mind Hacking, that has a very similar, and it may be the same methodology, I don't know, but it basically talks about the concept of you view your mind as if you're watching a film, right? So you are not your mind, they are separate things, right? You and your mind are separate, so you can control your mind, and you can control how your mind reacts and how it deals with certain scenarios and how it deals with things, and that kind of builds off the question that I initially started with, which was how do you deal with a stressful situation, or how do you deal with a potential stressful situation, how do you resolve that potential situation? And for me, something which I've found has been very, very valuable, and that's why I want to mention it here, is the idea to empathize why the person is feeling the way they are, right? So if it's a client who's upset about something, or if it's a friend of mine who's like really angry at me because I haven't spoken to them in like a week and a half, I try to empathize. Okay, if I was in their position and this person hadn't spoken to me in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 months, whatever, how would I feel? Right? And then I try and explain when my answer, or when I start to help to them to resolve the issue, or help to resolve the issue, I explain, okay, I completely understand how you feel. This is what's been happening, and then this is how we're going to resolve it, or this is how there is a solution. Is that okay with you? And sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. That's they're the things that you can control. Your reaction to that situation is what you can control. And I think that's an interesting concept to kind of gather, especially because if you don't do that, we're quite good at near gut reactions. Oh, someone's been angry to me, so I'm going to be angry back to this. Hold on. Just take a minute, process what's been said, reread the message 3 or 4 times, to have a little bit of empathy, have a little bit of thought, have a little bit of, reflection on that, and then go and answer it. Because what I think some business owners get, especially now, can get very, I guess, in a heat of a moment situation, can be, I need to react this way because I feel this person's wronged me, and so on and so on and so on. And something you need to understand as a business owner who's operating now in whatever you do, now is a very stressful time for every single person in business, right? They have 1,000 things they may not tell you about that's stressing them out, and you just might be the catalyst in which they're releasing that anger, stress, frustration, etc. And you need to respect that and understand that and help empathize that and help to be a solution to limit their amount of stress and bring their levels down of stress and say, look, it's okay, we can fix this problem. It's only a problem. It's not the end of the world. The world has not ended, right? I understand what you're saying. This is the solution. Leave it with me, or whatever, whatever the solution to the problem may be. And I think for me, when I started treating potential problems like that, I don't have potential problems anymore, if that makes sense, because I can kind of understand where they're coming from, and I try to be as empathetic as possible when it comes to how I react, and say, look, I understand where you are, I understand how you feel this way. There's nothing we can do about that right now because of X, Y, and Z, but this is what we can do. And I think, do you have I guess, is that like, my question there is that a similar part of the NLP practice? Or
Yeah, absolutely, and several things you've touched upon there are they resonate very strongly in the NLP world. And what we have a set of they're called presuppositions. So and we base our thinking on that. So one of them, and I'll touch on just a couple because I think they are very relevant to what you've just said, is that my map is not your map. We all have a different map of the world, and we could stare at a map of Wiltshire. I don't know that you're seeing what I'm seeing. I don't know what you're focusing on. I know what I'm focusing on. So if we go into a situation with the respect and understanding that actually we all have a different map of what's going on, we interpret things differently, it really does give you that sort of insight. You say empathy. I would agree with empathy. For me, it's about having insight into that the other person is seeing this as a problem. And okay, if I don't actually, enable them to move past that, I'm going to be part of the problem. So, for me, it's respecting that to start with. The other thing that we believe in, because NLP is so steeped in communication, the art of communication, is that we say the meaning of communication is the response you get. Now, if I ask you something and you don't understand it, I could say it 100 times. Unless I change the way I'm asking you, you're never going to understand it. So I could get much more cross, you could get cross and frustrated, and we could both end up, in a right old pickle. Now, what one of us needs to do in that dynamic is to change the communication. So think how else, because what we look at is we look at what do you want the outcome to be. Now, if you actually take this ahead with you, it's the teeniest, tiniest pearl of wisdom, and it is entrenched in the NLP thinking. But if you go into a communication with what do you want the outcome to be, it is so liberating. If you want that you're never going to talk to that friend again, and they're not a friend, and that's fine, that will dictate the communication. And it takes literally seconds to think about it. If you're going into an interview and you really want the job, you will have techniques, and again, I work through this with people, but you would have techniques where you actually think, what do I want the outcome of this to be? Is this what I want? How do I want it? When do I want it? So it's very, very outcome focused. And if you go, and it sounds as if it's superhuman, but in my personal world, in my business world, any communication that I undertake is, what do I want the outcome to be of this? And if you want somebody to understand that you're not feeling so good, if you want somebody to go think about that first, because so often we go hammering in with accusations, and you've just said that, and we're living in such a stressful world at the moment, and it is a difficult place out there. The world's become quite difficult to inhabit. However, the other thing that we believe in, which is huge, is that we actually work with the resources we have to hand. Now, if all we have to hand is being indoors and we can't physically go out, then That's what we have to handle. At least we know what we're dealing with. It's not unknown, it's known. Accepting it is a different level, but it's known. So we work with the resources we have to hand. So when you put that in the context of a relationship communication, business or personal, if the person comes back at you and they're really quite angry, they're using the resources they have. Now, the resource could be that you haven't called them for a week and a half, like you said. So they're on a different level to you to start with. So what we need to do is we need to consider what your first communication is then to actually heal that. What do you do? So so empathy, yeah, great word. Insight into how other people prefer to be communicated with. If somebody doesn't like text messaging and you keep sending them text messages, they think, oh, crikey. Their instant thing is because they're not really wanting that form of communication, then you're not really getting past them, that to get to them. So it really does, there's a lot of parallels of what you said, to what you've read, to how I work in the NLP world. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it comes to a terminology, and at that point we're talking about the same thing with different terminology. But the takeaway there is try to see yourself in their position, right? And I do this with my team. I do this with anyone who I work with as well. I'm like, okay, well, if I just paid this amount of money, the money I've just charged you, for example, and I provided the service I provided, am I going to be happy? Am I going to be, over the moon with the service? Okay, if not, why not? Right? And then how do I, me being me, remedy that problem? How do I add more value to you? How do I resolve whatever concern or whatever issue or etc. There is there, because there's clearly been a miscommunication or a breakdown in communication, whether that's, as you say, they don't like messaging and I keep messaging them. Okay, well, if someone's mad at me, using my example from earlier, if someone's mad at me for not ringing them, maybe the best solution to that problem is ringing them and then having a conversation with them,
Absolutely.
And that would be a way to resolve the issue, because what you've done by taking that step back is you've gone, okay, what is the actual core reason why they're annoyed or why they're frustrated or why they're upset here, and how can I then instantly remedy that, or not instantly, like instantly. Sometimes it is instantly, sometimes it takes some time, depending. But if it's going to take some time, then you can think, okay, well, how do I articulate this to that person to say, I completely understand how you feel. This is how I'm going to fix this problem for you, and these are what the expectations of that is going to be. In that respect as well. And I think for me, there isn't necessarily a parallel, but I think something I wanted to mention as well was we had I want to say around episode 5 of the podcast. It might have been like around episode 4, around episode 6. I'm not 100% sure on when. But we had a pivot or a change where we looked at what we were doing and we went, okay, it's not working as well as we thought it would be, or as well as it could be when we were doing the podcast. So we changed the strategy a bit. How did you find that? I mean, the strategy change, just to fill people in a little bit, was we looked at the metrics and we looked at what is has Jules actually made more money or had more bookings or had more people interested in what she's doing, right, through private DMs or etc. And the answer was not really, to be honest, was the answer I think we both came to. Okay, not really, but okay, why? Right? Okay, well, what are we not doing? Right? So then we decided, okay, well, the majority of your community and the majority of you spend your time on LinkedIn, and the majority of the people you want to talk to, I feel, and we both feel, are on LinkedIn. Okay, so we changed the strategy for the podcast to work more on LinkedIn specifically. How was that, I guess, the transition? How was that process for you, in whether how I handled it or how it was handled overall?
It was a really good move, Carlton, because I mean, you said from the outset, we'll float it across all of the socials, get it out there, see what's what and what's not, and then take it from there. And when we realised, which I think we both suspected, that LinkedIn was going to be the strongest platform to hold this podcasting, it did take a turn, and you then quickly stepped in with, well, let's stop putting little clips out. Let's put the LinkedIn 10-minute max out and give people the opportunity to listen to a shorter, more concise podcast in its entirety. And from then, I started getting a lot more interest. I think you've been looking at the views for me, and you've been looking at the sort of engagement, and something shifted then. And my part in it was simple. I just listened to what you suggested. And again, this goes back to, and this is why, we may tangle with the word parallel or whatever, but this goes back to using the resources we have, making the best of them. So the best resource we both agreed tentatively to start with was LinkedIn. So we both used that. Then we got this shift of more people are interested, more people are engaging, and more inquiries. So I think that, for me, it was trusting the process, trusting that you know what you're doing. That's key in this. And me not having to think about that bit. Me not, you suggested, if we do this, if we can keep it to the 10 minutes, how do you feel? We put a toe in the water. We've got other stuff that we could chop up if we weren't happy with it. So I was completely confident that you had it covered. So at no stage was there any sort of negative for me in doing that. And it was you that did it. I mean, I just turn up and do my chat, and that's what I do. And then you wave your flag and say, yes, come into 10 minutes, let's do some, but it's once you actually explain to me, let's try and get it to the 10 minutes, it was really easy for me then to think 10 minutes rather than think 20 minutes or think 30 minutes, but to think much more concisely, hit the point quicker. And it was easy for me, Carlton. And it's paying, it's paying dividends.
Yeah, and for me that's important to hear, and it's important, as I've said to you before, at every stage whenever I work with any client, that they're getting value from what we're doing more than whatever they're paying me. It doesn't matter what they're paying me, right? As long as they're getting more, whether that's perceived value, brand awareness, or actual money, or a combination of all the above, in what we're doing, then I'm doing my job correctly. Right, but the misconception that I've seen in marketing and I've heard in marketing, and there's being talked in marketing, is, we do this thing, it makes you more money, right? Unfortunately, it would make a lot of marketers' jobs a lot easier. Honestly, it would, but that's not the way it works, unfortunately, because there's a lot of Jules's relationship with her audience and the people she talks to and her customers and her clients are going to be different to mine, and different to Tesco's is, and Sainsbury's, and etc. They're going to have a different relationship. So by us changing that strategy, we look to see, like, what we do when we first start is we scattergun, we put everything out everywhere and see what happens, because we're looking to see where are the people who care about what we're talking about, right? If whether you have a perceived, like, part of the thing was, I think you already had a kind of established community on LinkedIn already, which helped, right? Because when we started, you already it wasn't starting from nothing, right? Starting from nothing is always harder. But I think the main thing that we found was, okay, well, people are actually engaging with this content over here, so let's stop wasting our energy and our time over here, right? On the other side, where it's not really doing what we feel it can do and really, gain the legs it could have. And let's then move to LinkedIn, and let's move to YouTube, and let's move to other areas of, other digital platforms that really allow it to grow on its own without us. We put it out, cool, yeah, and we strategize behind why we put it out and who we bring on and why and what we talk about, and etc., to help you articulate your message in the right way to your ideal client and to your ideal person. And that leads on to my next question. But we also then cut our losses in the areas that didn't necessarily work or we didn't feel were necessary, and that doesn't mean we won't revisit those. It just means for this specific medium or this specific podcast, it doesn't work on those platforms for you, right, and your audience. And that's a great thing to find, because now, whether we continue to work together or not, okay, if I'm doing a podcast, it should probably go on LinkedIn, because you've had that experience. You understand that that's where it works for you. And something which I if I remember correctly, when we started having an initial conversation about potentially working together and what we could potentially do, I asked you a question that I think you knew, but you didn't like wholeheartedly know, in regards to you couldn't literally describe that person to me, across a minute and a half, right? You couldn't all the fine details of who that person is, and the person I'm talking about is the ideal client, the ideal person, the ideal consumer. Was part of the process for you? Did I help you in finding, or because obviously like every business owner is aware kind of who their ideal consumer is, right? Like everyone kind of knows, but there's a big difference between kind of knowing and really knowing, in regards to you've done the research, you're thinking about messaging, you're thinking, because certain people will, unfortunately, and this is quite profiley, and I don't like doing it because it's very profiley, but the thing is, if you come across a specific way, you will appeal to one set of one group, and you will not appeal as much to a different set, right? That's life. So the question there is, what did you know about your ideal consumer before we started working together? And if there was, did you kind of get to know your ideal consumer a lot more as we started working together more and more?
Yeah, I did know. I do know. I have an avatar of my ideal client, and I have done for quite some while. I think what I wanted, well, no, not I think, I know what I wanted from you with your help was to really to bring the evidence forward for that, to actually validate that. So there was a lot of seeking validation in that I had got the right, I've got the right demographic, if you will, and to be comfortable with leaving the other people out that don't fit that demographic. Not to say I don't work with other people, but and that was a comfortable process, in as much as when we started exploring it, I think I went a little bit more free fall than I normally would, because I let you actually work out where we were going to, put the content out, how we were going to do it. And by letting you do that, it held a mirror up to me. And I thought, when I came off of the calls, our calls that we had before we start actually film the podcast, I thought, yeah, this is who I'm talking to when I'm talking in the podcast. This person is who I'm talking to. And I think that helped me a lot. I think the other thing that I think is really important in this is that by not focusing on things that I have no understanding of or can't control, it becomes a really nice experience, because I'm talking about stuff that I could talk about forever. And that's how I see this process. I'm talking about stuff that gives me the reason to get up in the morning. Enabling other people to feel it is just the best feeling. So allowing you and trusting you that you would just sort it all out. The it is the bit that I didn't want to get involved in. And I haven't needed to. And I've just trusted you, and I've trusted the process. So I don't think I had a problem with identifying my client. I think I had a problem talking with them on social media, because I hadn't found that the right way to do it, if you will, the most productive way to do it. So, by a toe in the water, it's evolved into, this is good. I'm getting good vibes back. I'm getting very good responses back. I'm getting inquiries back. So, and inquiries from the right people. So the message that you've encouraged me to put out, and the way that you've put it out, is attracting the people that I want and need it to attract. And that's a very important distinction. Like you said, in the early days, we did the sort of scattergun approach. And yes, for me, as soon as we actually settled into LinkedIn, this is the way forward, podcasting, and maybe, hopefully we're going to do some more stuff in the future together. But there was a shift. There was a shift that I was talking to different people. I think I changed my language. I think I changed by going on to LinkedIn. It was a much, I think it blended into that sort of form that it needed to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And I think, I have a lot of conversations.
But you did that, Carlton. I didn't do that bit. You did that.
You did it all on your own. Just don't know. No, absolutely. I mean, I think for me, a lot of the questions and a lot of the things I see on social is a lot of people just post because they've been told to post. You need to be on Instagram. You need to be on Facebook. You need to be on LinkedIn. Right? Yes, you do need to be on those things. But why are you on those things? Why are you on those websites? Why are you on those platforms? If you're using it to see, is that where your ideal client is? Fine, go for it. Post everywhere. Do exactly what we did at the start. Post clips everywhere, right? But there has to be a point where you choose and go, okay, well, is all of this effort and energy actually worth it? Whether you're doing it or whether someone else is doing it for you, right? The only difference is you're paying someone to do it then, so there's also money involved, right? Which kind of ups the ante a little bit in regards to you should see a return on the investment at some point, right? That's what everyone who spends money on anything wants, right? They want to see a return. And that's why I always say to people, why, even if you're just doing it yourself and you're investing your time could be spent better doing something else on doing something else. But that's why having someone like myself involved could help that process, because what we're quite good, or people who do what I do are quite good at, is we see what works and then we pull the plug on stuff that doesn't work when we know it doesn't work. Does that make sense? Because we'll see it doesn't work, because it's like, okay, but we've given this a month, a month and a half. We still aren't really gaining much momentum here. There's not much, changing. There's not much. And by no means does that mean you're going to get a million views overnight. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you will see whether your follower count's going up. You'll see whether your interaction's going up. You'll see whether you're getting more messages. You'll see whether since you started doing one thing, did you get more inquiries, and before you weren't getting any inquiries. It's not a large figment of the imagination to correlate the two. You start doing one thing, you get more of another thing. I guess they're probably correlated. There's no way to prove that by Jules doing a podcast it has meant she's got more inquiries. No, of course not. But through process of elimination, you started doing a podcast, you happen to get more inquiries from the right people. It kind of meant something changed, and through process of elimination you may look at that. But that's why I'd always recommend people do post on social media, but post on social media with a purpose. Whether it's to add value, whether it's to ask a question, whether it's to test to see if a kind of content works, to see whether a way of asking a question works, to see who your ideal client or ideal customer is and what their needs are and what their pain points are. Because once you understand that, you can ideally position yourself as the solution to them. Right, to that pain point, to that issue, to that concern, which in turn means, in most cases, you will increase your revenue, which is what at the end of the day, if you're in business, that's what you want. And I think some business owners can be undone by the fact that they are not transparent with the fact that they want to make more money, or they want to make money. But if you're in business, that's the point of making. That's the goal. That's the objective. So being upfront with that in how you do it, but also then ensuring that whenever you create a piece of content that it's valuable and someone can take something from it without expecting to have to pay you for it, I personally think is the best way to do it, and is why you'll get known as exponential growth, or you'll gain growth because you're adding value to your audience. There's, people say, oh, should you do stuff for free? You should, to an extent, in the right context. Right, you should give away stuff for free. You should give your advice, your understanding, your knowledge for free, right? Because by putting it on social, that's what you're doing. You're giving it away for free. But you need to also put it in the right way, so it, as we've discussed here, hits and the right people connect with it. But also then there's a in some ways necessarily a business context attached to it. Doesn't always have to be and shouldn't always be product, or service. No, there should be a middle ground where you can add value and educate and ideally, the best kind of content is educational and entertaining, which I hope most of my content is. Who knows? That's the goal with any content. But that's the power of social media. That's the power of podcasting. That's the power of video. That's what things, medium in which we provide, or services that media companies provide. That's what we do. That's what we help you with. That's what we help you come across with. And I hope people who are listening to this, that's what they're getting from this conversation. Hopefully, And I like to end off the podcast by throwing an open question or open topic to you as the guest. Do you have like a question? Again, you may not, but do you have a question or a topic or something that you have like had a question? Because I've been in these interviews sometimes as well, where I've got this question in my head for the person interviewing me, and I'm like, I don't want to ask it because I don't want to seem out of place. But is there anything that you kind of have a question or topic that you want to throw in before we wrap up?
I do. I tell you, I'm always intrigued. I think it's more of a sort of feedback thing, but I'm always intrigued to, and very. It's a very lovely thought actually, that by you listening to what I say, and I know you're concentrating on the tech side of it. I know you're concentrating on getting it out there for me, but for you to actually come away with wanting to know a bit more, it really, really does underpin what you're doing for me, because I can listen to what I do all day. But for you to then challenge it and question it, which you have done when we're working together, what does that mean and how are we going to get that across? That really is so helpful. So it's not a passive experience, it's a very engaging experience. So I didn't want it to sound as if, the sort of the person has to do nothing and then you do everything, because that's not the way it is. But I do think that by you feeding back, whether you've understood it right or not, it's given me added value for my own work, in as much as I now, when you are going to put the content, when you're going to put the podcast out and I write a bit of content to go with it, I really listen to it again with different ears, because you've made comments on it, and that's so helpful. So I think the whole thing of, I don't want people to think when they listen to this that you do podcasting and you get a guest and they do whatever they're doing. It really is a relationship, and it's a very, very symbiotic relationship. It's a good relationship.
Yeah, it's a team effort in that respect. Is what I'm taking from that. It's a team thing, right? We're both trying to push you forward in the direction you're trying to go, which is to grow your business, right? Like I said this earlier to a client, I have, because of how I work, because of how I do it, I have an invested interest in everyone who I work with, because I truly do, whether they're paying me or not, or whether I'm still working with them or not. I want them to succeed. I want them to become more profitable business owners, or more, whatever their goal is, whatever their, objective is to, obtain. It could be earning more money, earning more clients, getting more awareness, doing a talk, etc. Whatever it may be. Part of my want and need as a human, and why I do what I do and why I get up in the morning, so to speak, is to help business owners who are passionate and love what they do to be able to continue to do it, number one, as the main thing, because that's the reality of the fact, but also number two, to be able to be, and for them to not feel as overwhelmed on the road to wherever it is they want to go. So if you want to, I don't know, go and talk at TED, for example, a methodology and a way to get TED's attention on what you're doing is producing content around what you do, and helping that, and understanding what they're looking for. For example, I use them as an example because everyone knows who they are. It could be anything though. You could take that example. It could be, you want to get better at coming across on video. Okay, well, let's talk about how you can do that. What's your challenges? What's your hurdles when it comes to coming across better on video? Or is it, you want to know and you don't feel confident when you're having a conversation with someone about what you do? Okay, well, how can content help you do that? Well, it gives you a practice on basically having a conversation with someone about what you do over and over and over and over and over again. So there's a thousand different things that content can do for you, but it also is reciprocal, because once you start doing it, it gives you more ideas, and I hope it invigorates you to want to continue moving forward your business forward, and also helps you in your confidence, because you have that archive of footage, or archive of podcasts, or archive of you showcasing what you can do and talking about what you do, that gives you a lot more credibility when you go into having a conversation with a client, or you go and specifically, I get it all the time. People before a meeting, they Google me, right? So they Google Brand Media, they go to my website, they see my work, they kind of know a little bit of my background because it's out there, right? If you're not producing that content and you're not talking about what you do, people can't do that, right? People can't educate themselves on you. And a conversation I find, because people ask me all the time, don't you find like first meet and greets with clients or new or potential clients, or referrals, or whoever it may be, really stressful? And I'm like, well, I did at the start, like years ago when I started out, and like everyone, I did, yes. But the thing is now, because I've put out all of this content, and in most cases the person talking to me has Googled me, or knows me from social media, or knows me from this, or knows me from that, or follows the YouTube channel, or follows the Instagram, or whatever medium they choose to follow, they already know me. They already know how I work. They already know what work I've done. They already know who I work with. So the conversation becomes less about me having to showcase me, and more about how can I help them? How can I learn about their business? What are their issues? What are their concerns? What are their... And it makes my role in that meeting a lot easier, because I don't have to think, oh, what am I going to say if they ask me this question, right? Because the initial, and I think the reason why I mention it is, a lot of people ask me, how do you come over confidently when you're not confident? Well, the simple answer is practice. Is the simple answer. Ask any question you think you're going to get, and answer the question to yourself. Whether that's in video, whether that's in the mirror, or both. You might as well, if you're doing that anyway, film it, because then you can at least watch it back. Doesn't mean it has to go anywhere. And there's this concept within video that you film a video and you have to post it. No, you don't have to post it. You should post it eventually, but that doesn't have to be the first video you've ever made, right? The first video you've ever made can literally just be one that you film, watch back, take notes on, then delete, and do that process again. And that's a misconception, I think, that some people come up against, and I think it's important to appreciate that a lot of what we do with content is also going to help you in not just a marketing terminology, and not just getting your word out there. Because what it also does, as I've said, is it ups your, and feel free to disagree if you do, well, let me ask you, do you feel it's helped your confidence in what you've talked about? And what you do?
For me personally, I don't think it's a confidence thing, but I do think it's a shaping thing. I do think it's a context thing. So to get it out there to more people, what you've definitely helped me to do is to shape it into a package that is extremely useful for my business. Yeah, definitely. I would say that.
Fab. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time. For those people who may be interested in, as I say, seeing the podcast, talking to you about possibly working together, hearing more from you and seeing more of what you're doing, where's the best place for people to reach out and have a conversation with you?
Well, after what we said today, Carlton, clearly on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, and I am also on Twitter and Facebook and Insta. But my website is www.juleswhale.com.
Fab. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me, ladies and gents. I hope you did enjoy that interview and that episode. I do hope you took some value from it, and I would love to hear how I can get better on these podcast episodes in the comment section down below. So if you have a comment on how I could get better and you want to leave me some feedback, let me know in the comment section down below. But thank you so much for joining me once again. I'll be back next week with a brand new episode of the podcast. We're going to be interviewing someone brand new, and if I'm honest, I actually have no idea who it's going to be yet because I haven't booked it in. I haven't, found who that person's going to be. But we'll definitely have someone exciting. It's going to be brilliant. Have a great week. I'll see you very, very soon. And look after yourself. I'll see you soon.